You're listening to Online Pet Health Podcasts with Dr. Megan Kelly. Continuing education for veterinarian rehabilitation therapists. Learn more at onlinepethealth.com.
Hey Vet Rehabbers, this week we look at a recording of one of our business basics training in our membership portal. Now we have a whole business area that's there to help you to be the best vet rehabber that you can be, and especially to grow a successful vet rehab practice. But most importantly, we want you guys to do that without stress and burnout. So the topic today is so relevant. Sasha Foster explains to us how we can take actionable steps to prevent burnout. Now, burnout is one of those things that often you don't even realize it's happening to you until it's too late, and especially if you're one of those go-go type of people. Prevention is key here, as the consequences of not dealing with burnout can often lead to depression. So before we head over to that training, I wanted to share a few things with you. Now, I'd love to connect with you on Instagram, so please take a screenshot of this podcast, post it on Instagram, and tag me at Onlinepethealth, and let's get connected. It's great hearing from you and knowing that you're joining me each week and listening to the Veterinary Rehabilitation Podcast. If you're just getting into vet rehab and you're looking for some online learning in the field, go and check out our free limited access membership. We have some free webinars and training on specific vet rehab topics, which we just changed on the 1st of April. In the small animal membership, we have functional rehabilitation for performance dogs with Andrea Henderson. Our paid platform has now 165 hours, so this is just one of those webinars. The equine free webinar is Equine Head Shaking, Where Are We Now? And this is with Kirsty Pickles. In our paid membership, we have 98 hours of learning. And the Hydro platform, Optimizing Cranial Cruciate Ligament Healing through Hydrotherapy with Ansi van der Walt, and 79 hours now in our paid platform. You can sign up at onlinepethealth.com/free. You guys are going to find this training with Sasha Foster very valuable. Let's head over to the training. Hey Vet Rehabbers, welcome to the Business Basics this month, and I have Sasha Foster again with me. Thank you, Sasha. Thanks for joining me.
You're welcome.
Today, Sasha is going to chat to us about actionable steps that you can take to prevent burnout. Guys, this is so important. In our profession, and we are part of the veterinary profession, we have a lot of people that get burnout, compassion fatigue. Our suicide rate is really, really high in our field, and we need to look after ourselves. You know, we've spoken about how to have some self-care and look at your personal goals, but this is one step further now. If you're in the stage where you're about to get burnout, these are the steps that you need to take. Over to you, Sasha.
Okay. So I'm really passionate about this for a number of reasons. I've had true burnout, the kind of burnout where I couldn't get off the couch. And in the process of doing that, I really recognized that there is a physical and physiological thing that happens when you have true burnout. And the amount of time it took me to recover from burnout was about 1.5 years.
Sure.
So after having gone through that process, I became passionate about how do I prevent this from happening? And the first key for me was discovering, why did it happen in the first place? And for me, it was because I was taking responsibility for other people's poor actions. So people would not be doing their jobs, or clients would not be doing what they were supposed to. And I was literally taking the responsibility on for those choices other people made. So for me, the first step was recognizing that and actually hiring professional help. I hired a counselor, I had a medical doctor. So what I'm saying to you guys as a community is, if you feel like you're in burnout, don't mess around. Go get help. Because in getting help, all of a sudden that kind of exhaustion and heaviness that was weighing on me, I could start to see corners of light. And then in time, it was just more and more light. And it required some work on my part, but the work was really around self-care. So what I'm going to talk to you about today are the things that my counselor and now some coaches, in particular, my current life coach is very good at this, these are things that I've developed with their help that I share with my current team that people think works pretty well. So I'll just go through this list of things and then we can visit about it if you want. The first is to maybe reframe how we think about our days. I think about my day now in terms of what takes energy out and what puts energy in. And I tend towards fatigue, which is my first step towards burnout, when I have more energy out than energy in. And if I find myself at the end of a week where I'm feeling too tired, I might say to the team, hey, you guys, I feel like I've had a little too much energy out this week. Can you guys help me next week and maybe do more of the client interfaces for me so I can take a break from that? Because I know for myself, when I have to do a lot of client interfaces in combination with my treatments, that pulls my battery down. So understanding that will help my team then support me in that need. So if you're not sure right now what puts energy in and what puts energy out, I started by just writing a list of all the things I did every day. And when I read that, if it made me feel bright, I'd put an energy in. And if it made me feel dull, I'd say that's an energy out. So that's a way to start with that. So determining what is energy in and energy out. To prevent burnout, the goal then is to put more energy in things in your week. So in our professional lives, I think we come with this assumption that we are going to get something out of caring for something else, right? That it'll make us feel good to care for this dog. It'll make us feel good to care for this client. But if we do that constantly without putting care back into us, that starts to pull the battery down. So another strategy you can use in clinic is to figure out which cases pull your battery down. And can you share those cases with your colleagues? For example, we have a case, it's a really, really consistent dog, comes to therapy every 2 weeks. Owner is high needs, dog is high needs, right? So if I feel myself getting pulled down by this case, by having an awareness of that, again, I can reach out to my team and say, hey, you guys, can I please just take a break from this case next week? I need to fill my battery up a little more. So these are management strategies to kind of prevent the burnout from happening. Know what gives you energy, know what takes it out, and then work with the people around you to do more energy in things. So the third thing then for managing or preventing burnout is really to have a pragmatic approach about life. When our expectations do not meet reality, that difference is our discontent. And I think sometimes, I know especially for me, I used to think that I'm going to wake up in the morning and I'm going to say how this day is going to go. And this first patient is going to be great, and this client's going to be really nice. And I thought if I created my life or tried to define what my day was going to look like, that my day was going to look like that. But then you get to work and then the patient was sick last night and the client's in a bad mood, and then you get 4 inpatient hit by car cases and a tetraplegic Great Dane, and your tech calls out sick, right? I used to really let that affect my mental health. So having a pragmatic approach is stepping into the day and saying to myself, I am capable of handling whatever comes my way. My job is just to recognize, is this filling my battery or is this pulling the energy out? And at the end of the day, I'm going to check in with myself. And if it's pulled too much energy out, tomorrow I'm going to rebalance my day and put more energy in. So what that might look like the following day is I might choose to come into clinic early and take care of all of the inpatients before my outpatients show up. Or I may choose to delegate some of those treatments to the nurses so that we can see outpatients during that time. So what I'm saying is, instead of having a rigid expectation of what the day will be, to instead have a pragmatic approach and just whatever will come will come. I'm going to watch my battery, and tomorrow I'm going to modify. And what happens then is it becomes this much more fluid situation. So instead of it feeling rigid, like I failed and this day isn't going the way I want, it's a big mess. We've got a tetraplegic dog. We need 3 people to get it up. We'll do it later. So it just changes your kind of attitude about life. So these are the proactive approaches that I have learned from my coaches and my counselors. Be aware that you have a battery, know what goes in and what goes out, and have a pragmatic approach to your day. And then after we visit about this, we can talk about everyday prevention skills too.
I love that. So it's basically having an awareness of where you're at, because generally what you do is you just go from one day to the next. So you complete Monday and your battery's low, you've had too much going out, not enough coming in, and then you start Tuesday again without an awareness, just carrying on doing the same thing. And then when it's day after day after day, you get to a stage where you feel completely exhausted. So you need to be aware and stop it, basically, or manage it before it gets to that situation. Yeah.
Yes, and to really, to get to that place, at least for me, from where I started in true burnout, to get to that place really required me to do a lot of work around valuing myself, because I thought my value was about what I gave to other people. And over the years, I've had to learn that my value is in my skill set. And my skill set is only as good as my mental health is. So if I am rested and calm, and I don't even have to be battery full, I just need to be battery not empty.
Yeah.
I can think through very complicated clinical cases with my colleagues, develop treatment plans that have never been created before, do these complicated and interesting things that I love without it knocking me out.
Yeah. I love that. When you're chatting about your day and, having that type of approach to, like, anything can happen. Luckily, as a vet, we sort of thrown into that, because as a vet, you just never know what is going to happen. And I must say, it's the one part about veterinary that I hated. I hated not knowing, is there an emergency about to come through the door, a dog with an arrow through its chest or whatever, because those are the kind of things that just get thrown your way at any time. So and if you're a type of person like mine, you sit waiting for the emergency, you never rest. You're just sitting waiting, even when you finished everything, you're like, what is going to happen, So yeah, I think that veterinary prepared me quite well for veterinary rehab, because it's exactly the same. When you think that something's going to take half an hour, then the dog is overweight or whatever, and it's harder to lift, and so now it's taking you 10 minutes extra to get it into the room to do the treatment, and now you still got to do the treatment, and now those kind of things you just take in your stride. So yeah, that's great advice.
Yeah, that's great. And I think as human physios, especially if we come from the outpatient world where you've got a patient scheduled every 15 minutes, the diagnosis, the treatment plan, right? We're more geared towards that boxed in thing. So that's great if the vets are already trained for that kind of, we're going with the flow, because that's the way it is.
I wouldn't say we were trained. We were just thrown into it. You just never knew. I mean, I can remember my first job, like literally being in a consult with a dog, and the vet coming in and just saying, I'm going to take over this. There's a horse call that's got colic. Can you go and see the horse? So like, and at times you're doing an operation, and they're like, there's a horse, you got to go see it, because nobody wanted to see the horses. So they sent the new grad to go and see all the horses, and I was fine because I'm horsey at least. So let's chat about overwhelm, because this is actually the thing, this is what actually happens, is that, we have our day-to-day things that we're doing, and we've just got way too many things that we have planned to do, and we don't get through them, and then we get overwhelmed, and then we push them to the next day, and they continue to worry us. So I think, for me, that is something that generally tends to fatigue me and gets me into a state where I think like I'm going to burn out if I just do not stop, and actually have a look at what I need to do and actually block time. So I mean, years ago, I never did this, but now I do. I block time. So like I have my 3 musts. Those are the 3 things that I'm going to achieve today, no matter what. And I do those things first, and I block my time. And then whatever else I need to do, I block time for it. And then what I'll do is I'll have my list of things that I want to do, and normally we'll just work off that list. And then when I block the time, I realize this is all I'm capable of in this day. So I had unrealistic expectations to get through a whole to-do list, but there isn't enough time in the day. And then like, okay, that's all right. Like, this is all I can do. And when you get through it, then you feel like, okay, the rest of the stuff is for another day, So how do you handle that overwhelm? We chatted before in another business basics about delegating. So, I mean, I think that that's one of the things really that people can do. But how would you advise people to handle that overwhelm of all the things that we have to do, especially when we're spending a large proportion of our time in consults? Our consults are long.
It's such a great question. So I would say, number one, determine what's making you feel overwhelmed. So if you're a personality type where getting stuff done is part of you feeling success, then like you're doing, blocking time where you can actually get things done will relieve that pressure. If you're a different personality type and you feel like spending time with your clients is the thing that relieves your pressure, then creating space so that you can spend more time with your clients would relieve your tension. But another interesting thing that we found in clinic is there is overwhelm, and then there is what I call kind of ruminating or perseverating on the overwhelm. Like, I feel so overwhelmed. I have this to do and that to do and that to do, and I don't know how I'm going to do this. And you just can kind of create this mental situation where you have yourself in a bad brain space. So what we've done in clinic is we created a space where if you need to truly vent, for example, this client was just really mean to me, he said this, this, and this, that's okay, that's safe space. But what we created was what we call the no complain jar. Have you heard of this already?
No.
So it's a giant jar. And if you start down that track of, I'm so overwhelmed. I have to do this. I have to do that. And it starts to get like this. You have to put money in the complaint jar. So what this means is it just increases your awareness of, am I making this situation worse by complaining about it? Where what I could do is not complain and maybe go eat lunch because I'm too hungry. Or maybe what I need to do is step out of the building for 30 minutes because this morning was actually really, really hard, right? So what the no complain jar does is it stops the external validation of the overwhelm. Because what we were finding is we had one resident in particular, and she'll giggle about this now, but she would come in and she would start saying how difficult things were, how she was so behind, etc. And then the technician would join her in that conversation. And then the next person that walked in the room was conversation. And what ended up happening was they were spending their vital energy complaining instead of creating an action step. So I'm not at all saying if you're overwhelmed that it's because you're complaining. I'm just saying maybe have an awareness of when you're overwhelmed. Are you spending your time complaining about being overwhelmed? Or are you creating a strategy to become not overwhelmed?
Yeah.
So I'll give you a real situation that happens in the clinic. Our primary technician is a super type A people pleaser. And when I was reviewing these action steps for burnout with her, she's the person who will cancel yoga class to stay and answer phone calls. And I say to her, we have no expectation that you're going to do that. My expectation is that you're supposed to be in yoga class and you are choosing to stay here and work. So I'm going to the gym. Like people have to make their own choices. And what she said to me when we were talking about burnout is she said, Sash, I really have to just schedule something after work where if I don't show up, I'm going to disappoint somebody. I have to schedule dinner with my husband. I have to schedule coffee with a friend. I have to schedule art class so that I actually go do something else. And you know what happens when you go do something else, because we're talking about what do you do when you feel overwhelmed, is change your brain space. So do you know how you say you can go on a 2-week vacation or you can go on a 1-hour walk? Both will improve your mental health. So I think sometimes when we're overwhelmed, we forget the 1-hour walk. And if you just step away, go watch a movie, go visit with friends, go do your sport, that by doing that, you actually shift your thinking. So when you come back to your work, you don't feel so overwhelmed.
Yeah.
Because changing brain space is a really great way to not, how about this, to reframe or reset your feeling of overwhelmed.
Yeah, it's if I think about it, sometimes when you're overwhelmed, you can't find a solution to something. You just feel like I'm never going to sort this out. And because it's that kind of mindset that you're in. And then other times, you you look back, you'll think, well, I know exactly how I'm going to sort this out. And it's because I call it spiraling. When you're spiraling, you're just spiraling out of control. Your brain can't think properly. Your brain's going from one thing to another,
Yeah.
What I was thinking is, one of the things I think for me definitely is not having a plan as to what I'm going to do when I'm going to do it. So just doing things when I think that I should do them. So like that time scheduling thing for me, and writing down things. You mentioned, I think in one of the other trainings, how, you write all your tasks on your calendar and then you can tick them off. And sometimes I think that causes overwhelm when you think like you're in a consult and then a client says, can you send me, you say, oh, I've got this great PDF download on hip dysplasia, for example. And then they say, oh, please, can you send it to me? Yes, sure, I'll send it to you. So now you start thinking, I must remember to send that. I must remember to send that. And then something else happens. And now you start to think. And now you don't have a little pen anywhere to write it down. And you're just trying to keep remembering all the things that you need to do. And that causes the overwhelm. I think it's 7 things that you can actually remember. And after that, you start forgetting. And then when you start forgetting things, when you suddenly remember, that causes more stress and overwhelm because you think, oh, what else have I forgotten? What else have I forgotten? And you start to think of all the things you've forgotten and you can't remember. And so actually having a system to remember how to do things,
Well, and I think a system for how to remember things, but I think more importantly in the example you just gave is maybe in that case modifying the workflow. So is there a way to get the client that PDF download right now? If you can change your workflow so that you can download that PDF or send that PDF right now.
Yeah.
So that it doesn't have to stay on your to-do list, which is why building really tight workflows, and in that case, it might just be that the computer that you're on doesn't have the PDF on it.
Yeah.
Well, maybe that means that all of your educational tools need to go into the cloud. So no matter which computer you're on, you have the ability to do it right now.
Yeah.
And then also, speaking back to delegation, is who can you delegate those things to, and what would be the system for delegating? So for example, we have push-to-talk phones. So if I'm doing a discharge and needed this same PDF download, I could PTT the tech and I would say, hey, will you please email this to the client straight away? And she's at the computer, because one of our other systems is that we have one person as the captain each day. And they sit in the center of the gym and they control the flow. So we've got a point person to take care of all those details. And then it's off the list.
Yeah.
Right? So I think some of that overwhelm could be controlled by changing the workflow a little bit, maybe.
Yeah. So one thing I learned is instead of creating a to-do list, you create a not to-do list. And then you basically write all the things that you do in a day. And you either automate them. So all the things that you do that you don't necessarily need to do. So not everything that you do. So everything that you do that you don't necessarily need to do. And then you write 3 things: automate, delegate, or eliminate. And you basically circle which one. So you're either going to automate it, or you're going to delegate it, or you're going to eliminate it. Because sometimes I think there are things that we do that we don't even need to be doing.
I love that idea.
Yeah.
I'm going to have my tech do that one.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
No, it works well.
Yeah,
it works well.
Yeah. The other thing I think is really important is when we're talking about preventing burnout and really everyday prevention burnout skills, I love the idea of figuring out what you can delegate, what to eliminate. I think it's also sticking to your boundaries. So I know for myself that part of my burnout issue was that I was available to people 24 hours a day. That sounds just crazy to me now, but it's true. I was.
Yeah.
And I had to retrain the staff. Like a really great example is I had a vacation planned. They scheduled a VIP patient the first morning of my vacation. And because it was a VIP patient, I elected to come in to clinic. So what did they learn? That they could schedule a VIP patient at any time and I'd be there, right? We also had situations where people would text me on vacation. And so we had to come up with, as a group, we need to manage our own boundaries. So then I could say to the staff, hey, we agreed as a group that we are going to really emphasize self-care, and we're not going to email after work hours. We're not going to text when we're on vacation. We're not going to show up for a VIP patient that you scheduled on my vacation. And initially that created quite a bit of drama because it requires behavior change. But now it's no longer an issue anymore.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that each and every one of us has to have our own boundaries, whatever you're prepared to do. But, you need to start how you want to end. So make sure, when you have staff, because if you are that available person and they've got a choice of who do I book this in for or who do I call to find out this answer, if you're the one who's available, they're going to keep phoning you. That's what's going to happen. It's going to be you, so somebody else in the team will be setting all the boundaries. Another one will be setting their boundaries, and you're not, and you're just getting called all the time. So everyone's going to be different, but you got to do what's right for you and make sure that you look after yourself.
Yeah. So I think kind of to review then our proactive steps, it's that you want to have clear and precise boundaries and then stick to them. That would be the first one. The second one would be to change your headspace. So if you're feeling overwhelmed, instead of sitting in your overwhelm, go do something else. Change your headspace.
Yeah.
And then the third one is really to stay physically healthy. One of the things I want to emphasize for you guys, because it happened to me, is that when I had burnout, I found out I was physically ill, right? So there was actually a physical component to my sadness and my depression. And so I want you guys to know that if you're feeling like that and you feel like you can't get out of it, go get help. There is no need to suffer.
Yeah.
No need to suffer at all.
And reach out to us. So I'm here for any of you guys. If you just need someone to talk to initially, you're overwhelmed, you're just not sure what to do, how to change things, you can reach out to me anytime.
That's great.
Awesome, Sasha. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed this.
You're welcome. Thanks for the visit. Have a good day.
Cheers.
If you enjoyed this podcast, please hit the subscribe button so you get notified every time I load a new podcast. And please, if you get a moment, head over to Stitcher or iTunes and leave me a review. It's a really lonely job being a podcaster, and so the only time I get to hear from you or know that you're out there is when I get a review. And know that I read every single one of your reviews. So to those of you that have left reviews, I want to say a very, very big thank you. Every time we get a review, it really helps to get the veterinary rehabilitation podcast out there to all the vet rehabbers all over the world. Alright, vet rehabbers, so if you are looking for more continuing education in the field of veterinary rehabilitation, head over to Onlinepethealth.com. Go be awesome, guys.